All right, good day and welcome. Well, hey, Josh, guys, this is a little bit different atmosphere for us. This is, of course, Josh, and my name is Darren, and we're excited to be here for Commerce today. And we have some interesting, shall we say, late breaking almost news to discuss in this episode. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, it's so rare in our industry that we have true like breaking news, but we actually do. A couple of days ago, I told Darren, "Hey, I think we should do a podcast episode on BigCommerce," and I feel like someone must have heard us because there has been big announcement after big announcement coming out of BigCommerce the past really 48 hours, even this morning. So, and I think a lot of this, the situation's moving very quickly. I think so. They have a quarterly earnings call tomorrow morning, and it is rare that I will try to make a prediction 12 hours in advance or however long that is. I guess 18 hours. I think there's going to be a surprise in that earnings call, and I think it's going to be either very good or very bad surprise because I have not seen a public company since maybe Tesla do so much to generate so much news in the days leading up to a earnings call, especially news that's kind of like, don't worry, it might look bad, but we're on it. So I'll be wrong, but I think there's a good chance that tomorrow morning's earnings call might be a little brutal for BigCommerce.
I see. So you're calling it for the negative. So you're updating your resume to take that spot on CNBC for the next round. I see.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. Or I'm going to be horribly wrong and never be invited to CNBC ever. So,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah. So originally,
CNBC so far. So
true,
anyway, enough about CNBC.
true.
Let's kick this off. We wanted to start off a little bit about BigCommerce and really kind of their arch rival in this case, Shopify. So let's go there.
Yeah. So this whole original episode, the idea we were going to talk the whole time about BigCommerce versus Shopify, mainly because Rick Watson, a e-commerce industry expert, had a really interesting post on LinkedIn, basically saying he felt like there's a big opportunity for BigCommerce in the mid-market against Shopify, and that kind of caught my attention because Shopify is winning everywhere right now, and BigCommerce hasn't had a lot of great wins lately. So I started looking at that, and kind of the points that Rick made was that outside of Shopify, there's no other American public market e-commerce platform solely focused on e-commerce. So if you are looking at American publicly traded, it's Shopify and BigCommerce, and even Shopify technically Canadian, but it counts North American. Also, when you look at e-commerce SaaS platforms, especially American e-commerce SaaS platforms, it's Shopify and it's BigCommerce. And there's a few other smaller ones in there, but the big fast growing ones, it's just those two. And we're at an interesting inflection point where enterprise brands are really looking at SaaS and looking at Shopify and BigCommerce more than they used to. Like used to the mid-market and especially the enterprise level wouldn't even consider Shopify or BigCommerce. Both of those platforms have introduced kind of enterprise-y additions and have really attracted a lot of attention that way. And so kind of the thesis, I think, of Rick's article, and we'll get into this a little bit later in more detail, but Shopify's play has been around, we could do your logistics and we can do your payments. And there's a lot of bigger brands that don't want their e-commerce platform doing their payments, especially given that Shopify wants to take a cut of that. And so BigCommerce doesn't do that, creates a little bit of differentiation, and definitely a potential there for BigCommerce.
Well, and it allows those companies on BigCommerce obviously to take more of the profits of what they're doing and not give it away, which is definitely a huge thing. Yet here we are. So kind of next up along these lines as we're going, the big announcement or the big thing that just broke was about BigCommerce, at least for sale or looking for a new investor.
Yeah, so Reuters broke the news early this morning or late last night, depending on your time zone, that BigCommerce engaged an investment bank to explore the sale of the company. So they're currently publicly traded. So this would most likely look like someone buying them and taking them private, or another publicly traded company buying them. I secretly hope maybe Adobe buys them. I think that BigCommerce plus Magento all in one company. I start to get pretty excited there. Probably not likely, but it's really interesting to me though because they announced this 2 days, or they didn't announce it. It leaked to the press 2 days after they announced that they've appointed a new president, Travis Hess, who has quite a bit of e-commerce industry experience, as well as a new vice president of Americas for enterprise sales. So originally it looked like, oh, they're going to have this big push into enterprise sales. They're going to try something new. I have a hard time believing that a company like BigCommerce would appoint a new president, especially somebody like Travis, and then surprise him with this acquisition talk. I think that probably informed him in advance, and maybe I'm getting kind of flashbacks, but slightly in reverse, of when eBay brought in Mark Lavelle to run Magento, basically to help them spin Magento off into a private equity situation and then grow it so that Adobe bought it. Could be that Travis has a similar mandate to do this for BigCommerce.
Something real quick. I know you're going on here, but I want
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you specifically about Travis. He comes from Accenture, and last I remember, there was Adobe and Accenture are pretty tight. Do you think that could signal something?
It could. Travis, however, though, also has fairly close ties to Shopify. So the whole thing is interesting. So Travis has worked at a number of different agencies. One of those agencies was acquired by Accenture. That's how he ended up at Accenture. So, yeah, there's a lot of connections there. I mean, he's someone that is very well connected into the e-commerce ecosystem. I mean, he even has experience with a couple of agencies we're familiar with here in the Dallas area. So, like, he is well connected, but it does point to, there's some Shopify connections, some Adobe connections. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And yeah, probably the most interesting part of that Shopify connection is he actually served on their partner advisory board. So like he was in some pretty high level conversations with Shopify, and now he's taking that information and experience straight to BigCommerce.
Interesting. Gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all the fun. Well, I guess that leads then to for those that might speculate and want to invest in the stock, because BigCommerce is a publicly traded company. What all is happening there that is also related to this?
Yeah, so one of the reasons there's all these talks of someone acquiring them is BigCommerce is on sale. Their stock is down 90% from where they IPO'd in 2020, and that's why so many people are talking about acquiring it. They've had some challenges with revenue growth. With a public company, especially if you're not constantly growing and growing faster than you were growing before, the market doesn't like that. And since 2022, their revenue growth keeps decelerating. Basically, Shopify is growing. Shopify is capturing a greater market share, and BigCommerce is shrinking a little bit. They also have a lot of debt in the process of going public and growing and going public. They acquired a lot of debt, have a high debt load. That's variable interest rate debt. So that's putting pressure on the balance sheet. And then their sales are down. And actually, their CEO has cited in a lot of earnings calls now that consumer spending is lower, higher interest rates. That means merchants are taking longer to decide to switch platforms. The number of merchants replatforming is reducing. So that has put a lot of stress on them. I think fundamentally, I actually long ago worked at a company called Interspire on a product called Interspire Shopping Cart. And for those that don't know, Interspire Shopping Cart became BigCommerce, and Interspire became BigCommerce. And so I've actually helped write some of the code that may even still be out there. Who knows? Hopefully not at this point. But just from that experience, I would say like the fundamentals behind the platform and behind the company are sound. It just seems like a really bad set of competitive and kind of environmental and financial circumstances are hitting them pretty hard.
Interesting. Well, do you think that with the addition of a new president, the announcement of looking for at least potential buyers or investment, and then something that I think they also just recently announced, this open source B2B portal, or buyer portal, I should say. Do you think that those are things that could tip the scales in a more positive direction, possibly?
I think that's their hope for sure. As my camera tries to fall off the wall.
That happens.
So yeah, I think they're trying to put together a number of items to either attract a buyer or to attract customers, or both. And yeah, this open source B2B buyer portal is really interesting to me. So they just announced this. They're calling it the open source B2B buyer portal. Kind of their tagline for it is giving B2B enterprise customers full control to build and customize optimal buying experiences. Sounds really interesting. Sounds intriguing, kind of being able to have a big commerce platform, a SaaS platform running your B2B business, but being able to have the open source ability to really customize the buying experience. The challenge I have with it is how does BigCommerce and especially their marketing team here define open source? So far, there is no source that is open. I went and I looked. BigCommerce does have, and we'll have it in the show notes, a repository where all of their open source items are listed, and this isn't listed there. So I'm wondering if what they actually mean is if you buy this, we will give you a copy of the source under a restrictive non-open source license to where you can modify it and use it for your business. That's not quite open source. That's still cool and interesting, but it's not quite open source. I was looking for the source because if this is truly a full open source product, then that to me signals it could be a play towards Adobe and Magento open source. It could be a play towards Shopware. Like they could be doing some interesting things, but so far it's mainly a press release more than anything else. And so we'll have to see, is it truly open source or not, and kind of what that means.
So not a lot, at least backing it at this point. Now, the one thing to remind everybody as we're going through this, we've talked about several topics. Our show notes have links to all of these topics, so definitely want to remind everyone on that. Well, as we kind of bring it all together, kind of what's the strategic market positioning for BigCommerce? What do you see as you look at your crystal ball there, Josh?
Yeah, so BigCommerce, they're in a good spot. Maybe not financially, maybe not economically, but as far as in the market, I feel like they're in a good spot. They have a solid focus on both B2B and B2C. They have that kind of space away from Shopify I mentioned earlier, where they're not trying to be your payment gateway. They're not trying to be your shipping provider. They are trying to be your e-commerce platform with really simple, transparent pricing versus kind of that percentage model that Shopify will use. And IDC actually just put out updated MarketScape reports, and they showed that for B2B, they now show BigCommerce as a leader. And for mid-market B2C, they show BigCommerce as a major player, which is a big upgrade for them. So like they are definitely getting a solid niche carved out in the market for themselves. This is a bit of a kind of a Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold situation. The platform really, one thing that I've always liked about BigCommerce is there's just more to it from a technical standpoint than Shopify. Like I feel like it is a little more complex, a little more robust. Just a lot more you can do with it if you are technically savvy. I think Shopify has always really tried to focus on without a developer, without any code, get a site up and running out of the box, but they're all pretty similar and require a lot of plugins. BigCommerce gives you more room to customize, I feel like, and then it doesn't bring in all the complexity you get from a fully composable platform, something like a Commerce Tools. So again, it's kind of in that middle. And I think that middle is a really good place to be right now. And then if they do add true open source around this B2B piece, again, that's a good kind of hedge against Shopware, Magento open source, things like that. And then again, you don't have that payment gateway tie-in and fee structure at Shopify. So it really, if they navigate this well, whatever this new, whether it's taking them private, being acquired by another public company, if they navigate that piece well, get into a little bit better financial situation, I think they represent a really interesting option on the market. I do think, though, if you're a retailer out there and you're considering switching platforms, going to a new platform, it does have to give you pause. You have to kind of think, wait, do I want to sign up with BigCommerce right before they're potentially acquired by someone else and everything could change? Like, I think that getting solid messaging out and getting through this acquisition phase as fast as possible is going to be important, because I think that this news alone is going to slow down some of their sales cycles.
It definitely could. I mean, companies all the time, whenever there's announcements, it does create pauses. Do you think there's any possibility that instead of, I know you were excited about the possibility of Magento or Adobe being the purchase or the investment on, what if the flip side, what if it's Shopify to look to maybe add a more complex solution to their repertoire, if you will?
That's an interesting idea. I wonder though, what the Federal Trade Commission would say about that. I feel like a lot of our lawmakers don't understand e-commerce, don't understand these platforms, but I think that even they might hear the word Shopify wants to buy BigCommerce and think, wait, these are the only two big North American players in SaaS e-commerce. Maybe that would be an anti-competitive move, but I think it could be a smart move, but I don't know if the regulators would go for it. And I think especially looking at all the impact that Adobe's failed acquisition of Figma had whenever the FTC stepped in, it may give Shopify some pause on that. So,
Interesting.
oh.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot to think about around this. The broader implications of, hey, what does this potentially do to BigCommerce's uh, internal, their sales, their outbound sales, as well as their potential purchase inside the marketplace of the company overall. I guess what's your last thoughts, takeaways as we land this show?
Um, I think I have a number of people I know, friends, acquaintances over the years that are working at BigCommerce. There's a lot of smart people there doing some really cool things. And so I don't think, just like there was a Wall Street Journal article earlier this week that polarized the entire industry between if online or offline was more important. Um, I think there's going to be some articles saying, this is the death of BigCommerce. This is the end of BigCommerce. It's not. It's not. They're going to continue in some form or fashion. It'll be potentially under a different company's name. But our industry has seen that happen multiple times. In my role working with Magento, I've been through a few acquisitions now. And yeah, it'll create change, but BigCommerce is going to be around for quite some time. And so I think it could be a good opportunity, actually, if you are a merchant considering replatforming and you need, you've said, hey, it's got to be a SaaS. I want a SaaS. Don't just automatically go to Shopify. Definitely look at BigCommerce. And if anything, especially on the enterprise level, given that they just appointed also a new vice president of enterprise sales for the Americas, you might be able to get a good deal. It might be a good time to say, hey, I don't like some of this news I'm hearing, but your platform's interesting. What can you do to convince me to switch to BigCommerce? So definitely keep them on your list, maybe move them up your list if you're looking for a SaaS-based e-commerce platform right now.
Excellent. Well, as they say, let's make a deal. And I guess if Travis Hess is listening out there, and we hope he is, definitely reach out to Joshua Warren on LinkedIn and all the others, as well as all of you listening. We definitely love to hear from you. Explore BigCommerce for your businesses, and we definitely want to hear your feedback and questions. I have a feeling that this topic may come back around at a later point to have a revisit to see what ultimately happens. But with that, we thank you all for joining us. Definitely subscribe and grab the information. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.